Let's go.
Wake up, all you need to know. You can find it here at the Sonia Poulton Show. Giving you the lowdown where others will not go. Wake up to the Sonia Poulton Show.
Good morning, Grand Rising. It is Friday the 21st of March, 9 a.m. GMT. I am your host, Sonia Poulton, and I am taking no nonsense today. Absolutely no messing. How are you? Welcome to Wake Up, the show that knows that the truth movement has been captured by some of the most idiotic people on planet Earth. But we are here as the antidote. Oh, yes, indeed, we are. Spring has officially sprung in the Northern Hemisphere. And you know what that means, peeps? That's right. New beginnings. So what is on Wake Up today? Well, I will be joined by political commentator Anthony Webber, who will be talking about Prince William in Estonia and Starmer and Ukraine and the net zero nonsense and on and on. I'll also be joined by Neil McEvoy, leader of PROPEL in Wales, who is deeply concerned that the Welsh identity is being erased. And I think many of us have that feeling as well, whichever side you find yourself on. I'll also be joined by designer and mum Rachel Kleinig. She's absolutely terrified of Starmer's cruel cuts to disability and how it will impact her family. Plus, we'll be talking about the Netflix drama, Adolescence. How did so many people miss the point of it? Is it willful ignorance or what? I'll be drilling down on that. And questions. Angie Stone's death. All is not as it would appear. And I know that's not going to shock any of you. And I'm going to be doing something of a deep dive into her former music industry boss, Lucian Grange. And also in memory of real truth teller, Jordan Maxwell. So many people are influenced by Jordan, myself included. And he left us a couple of years back. It was, I think, 2022. I'll be talking about that more a bit later, but it was the 23rd of March. Thank you for being here. Our final thought today will be about new beginnings. And the thing about us around here is we do news differently. And you know why that is? Because someone had to. How are you, everybody? I'm alive. Thank you to viewer John Young, of course, for today's theme tune. And Marcuson has fought back. In response to the AI critics on Wednesday, he said, "Great show, Sonia Poulton, and I will weigh in on the AI conversation. I wrote the Grand Rising song, used AI vocals and a digital audio workstation, DAW, to put the track together. That's called technology. So please give the human that created it some credit. We do indeed." You're a star, Marcuson. I love Good Morning Grand Rising. As I explained on Wednesday, I can see uses for obviously human beings as creatives, and I can also see some uses of AI as well. And I didn't think I would ever say that, but there you go. How are you all? Grand Risings to you all. Hello, Teresa and Marlena and Kevin and Fred. And how is our crazy bunny? She's been very unwell. God love her. And how's our Shin? And Lisa and Armand, how are you all? Good morning, Silly says. Good morning, Randy. Good morning, Greg. Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, Simon. And Clown World indeed. Right, news since Wednesday. Well, one of the world's busiest airports, Heathrow, has come to a standstill. My daughter is in the US and she's informed me that she's supposed to be coming back this weekend. She's like, "I'm not really sure, Mum, what's happening." Heathrow apparently is literally more than 1,000 flights have been grounded. This is due to a fire. Details are coming in as we talk. I'm already spitting. What's going on today? How are you? How are you all? Love Jordan Maxwell. Indeed. Chemical cloud spraying, says Ian. What's going on? So what's happened since Wednesday? Well, the Assisted Dying Committee, which continues as laughing assassin Kim Ledbetter, continues to push through her insane goal to legalize murder in the UK. Yes, I said it. And one of her greatest allies in this whole thing is MP Kit Malthouse, who stooped to a new low when talking about hospices that might not be prepared to comply with assisted suicide should it become law. He appeared to suggest that they should be defunded, that they should not receive any state funding. And he said it twice. He said, should they still be able to deny what is a legal service if they are in the receipt of public funds? That sounds like a threat to me. These people, they want to push through this assisted suicide by hook or by crook. Oh, yes, indeed, they do. Sunday, of course, marks the anniversary of the UK being locked down following the announcement from serial father and serial liar Boris Johnson. And this week, midazolam Matt was back at the C19 inquiry as the midazolam death inquest for Derek Dimmock, I think it's Derek Dimmock, at Southwark Coroner's Court took place. This could change the game over what has happened. Justice must absolutely be served. We know something deeply untoward took place over the last 5 years, and some of our most vulnerable were the casualties, were the collateral damage for the psychopaths who ran this particular game on us. Good morning, Finn. How are you? Good morning, Robert. Good morning to you all. And the JFK files. Confusion continues to reign around those JFK files that have been released. But I have one question. Why have so many social media influencers who are all over this and waiting in anticipation, they suddenly gone so quiet? I'll tell you why, because they cannot afford to upset their Israeli paymasters. If we've learned anything from the files, it's the overwhelming and long-term interference of Israel in affairs around the world. And it matters because it means America, and by extension the world, have been captured in this lie since the 60s, right? It matters because they are still lying about the Kennedy assassination. It matters because it essentially means that the powers that killed Kennedy are still influencing our world and are likely highly still in charge. And by the way, bear in mind that the term conspiracy theorist was coined by the CIA in the 60s to silence anyone daring to question the official JFK narrative. You cannot make this stuff up. No, you can't. And did Russell Brand fall for the Penelope Keith lie in the RFK files? It would appear so, because there was a fake document put out which said that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald and was in fact actress Penelope Keith, who used to appear in a British sitcom called The Good Life. And Russell Brand, it would appear, tweeted that. Yeah, that's what I mean. The truth movement has been captured by absolute idiots, and he's one of them. I'm not a fan. No, I'm not a fan, and I'm in the mood to say it today. Oh, yes, indeed I am. Yes, indeed I am. How are you all? How are you all in the comments? Let me have a look at you. They will, James. And who cares? I don't care. Don't care. To the manor born, Jackie. It's hilarious. These people are insane. And I do have to ask this very serious question, and that is lawfare being waged against Tommy Robinson? I asked that because Tommy Robinson's legal team appeared yesterday at the Royal Courts of Justice in London for an emergency court hearing to discuss the judicial review of Robinson's prison conditions. The hearing looked at his solitary confinement, claimed to exceed 140 days. Aims to determine if the judicial review should be expedited. Ezra Levant from Rebel News was over and appears to be fully supporting this. Well, of course, he's another one of the kind of Israeli lobby, as we know. They're all over the place. Alistair Williams was representing Tommy, and Justice Martin Chamberlain was overseeing this. And there's something not right there. I mean, the thing is, obviously, Tommy Robinson was in prison for contempt of court, but I do think that we need to look at whether there are some issues here of whether he is in part a political prisoner. I've known other people to be in contempt of court and not to be treated like him. And the thing about Wake Up is I do try to be as fair and balanced as possible, regardless of whether I like a character or not. And I think that there are questions to be asked around his imprisonment. And because the question really is he being treated unfairly, or is this actual justice taking place? His followers say he is subject to actions that others aren't. And his critics point out that he's in prison for contempt of court. So a very legit reason. Who knows? Who can tell? Benny wants to know if Brand has moved to America to escape something. Don't know, Benny. And by the way, did you see that the Andrew Tate is now suing about 10 people on X who have been calling him out for the things that he says in his own videos? What did I tell you? The truth movement has been captured by absolute idiots. I'm going to be saying this all morning. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I am. And Callum says, Tommy Zionist or not, no one has done more for poor young girls than him in our lifetime. Callum, sit down, Callum. I like you. But that is simply not the truth. That is simply not the truth. Many of us have been out here for decades fighting for poor young girls, right? Got to say that. So solitary is torture. Overkill for Tommy. Got you. The one thing I will agree with you, Callum, is I do believe that as an activist, he really highlighted the grooming gangs. 100%. But your description that he's done more for poor white girls than anybody else is just, it doesn't compute. Sorry. But I do think he's done a load around the whole grooming gang issue. And that is primarily because of the demographic involved in grooming gangs, because I've never seen him do a lot to do with paedophiles in the British establishment or paedophiles in, I don't know, Zionism. I don't know, might be selective. Who knows? And who can ever tell? How about Shazia Hobbs? Who the heck is Shazia Hobbs? Don't know. I have no idea who Shazia Hobbs is, Mels. Tell me. Stop praising the messengers. It is not a competition. What? I got silenced here on PVS. I'm not even understanding some of these comments. Have we slipped into some sort of parallel universe? I want to bring in my first guest. Let's bring in my first guest. I've done enough spitting and swearing to start us off today. Let's go. Anthony Webber, good morning to you. Political commentator. How are you, Anthony?
Hello, Sonia. I've just been interested in those comments. Of course, I don't know why you're not referring to him as Stephen. Yes, I think you're totally right. You've got to be fair to people. He did do his bit, but a lot was done well before he came upon the scene. He was just yet another person who highlighted it. I mean, people don't like to say it, but the so-called extreme right, BNP and various other people got elected on issues like that. And even some Labour MPs have stood up on it. So for one person to claim the credit is completely wrong. So yes, we don't want unfair justice in the UK for anyone, but let's not put somebody on a platform they don't actually deserve to be on.
I echo that. Absolutely. So you've joined us, of course, for the news review, and there is a lot to cover, isn't there? So let's start with Prince William in Estonia. What's going on there? Show of support for troops, apparently.
Well, if you look at the mainstream media, it's all to do with deterring Russian aggression against a NATO state, Estonia. And anyone who knows anything about the subject will know there's not been any Russian aggression against Estonia. They've made it quite clear they're not interested in any other country. They simply want to be secure regarding the borders in respect of Ukraine. But it's interesting because the last royal visit was by Her Majesty the Queen. And I think that was back in 2006 with Prince Philip. Now, that was in a period when the royal family were promoting good relations with not just the Baltic states, but with Russia as well. And of course, policy has changed since then, because when Her Majesty visited Estonia, she wasn't making aggressive type comments, which Prince William has been put to do. I mean, what we've had is him saying he's been praising Ukrainian resilience in the country of Estonia, which has got a 22% Russian-speaking population. Right. So it's hardly bringing people together. I mean, right. what I prefer is our royal family to be messengers of peace, which was the case before, going back 30 odd years ago when we had the series of royal visits to Russia and President Putin coming to Buckingham Palace, we now seem to have Prince William being used by the government to perpetuate their completely mistaken policy of being aggressive in Ukraine and Russia. And I think the royal family should be very careful of being used for political ends, right. And it's just I think it's completely wrong, and we don't want to stir up hatred and aggression between anyone. What we have got, particularly in Eastern Europe and the Baltic states, is they're revitalizing this sort of neo-Nazi antagonism towards what was then the Soviet state and is now Russia. And I don't think we want to have any nation in the world being put up against another and being anti-Russian or anti-Ukrainian or anti-this. In this modern day world, we want to try and bring about peaceful relations with all countries. And unfortunately, at the moment, the UK government is basically one of those which is propping up this war, because it would have finished a long time ago if it wasn't for all the money and military resources which have been poured in mainly by the United States, but also the United Kingdom has been one very responsible for all this sort of genocide which is going on, because it's all absolutely pointless. Anyone with any ounce of knowledge of military matters would have been able to tell that Ukraine never had a chance from day one, even if they had some successes. They just didn't have a chance under the circumstances they were in, because nobody was going to help them apart from military and financial aid. So what's happened?
Anthony, let me just interrupt you there, right? But because the problem, of course, with Prince William being there, so he's there in his role of Colonel-in-Chief of the Mercian Regiment, which is kind of hilarious. I think we all find it slightly funny when members of the royal family suddenly rock up as Colonel-in-Chiefs of anything, because hardly any of them have actually served anything. And again, it's royal family getting involved in politics. And as you say, we should be very careful about that. But is this not about, given all that's going on at the moment to do with Ukraine, Donald Trump and everything, isn't this about a show of support for Ukraine? Because Estonia has been a key supporter of Ukraine, right?
Yeah, oh yes. I mean, the situation in Estonia, they've been one of the most aggressive countries out. In fact, I think they've only got 1.37 million population. So quite often in the mainstream media in the UK, the Estonian point of view is put forward, but they're a minute country. What purpose is UK foreign policy in sort of going along with all of this? Because I think we've lost sight of what's actually in the UK's best interest. And looking ahead, we need to have good trading relations with the Ukraine and with Russia. And the way we're going at the moment with the antagonism going on, we're going to be right at the bottom of the queue with trading relations with Russia. And bear in mind, going back to the time of Margaret Thatcher, Reagan, and so on, we thought that trading relations with Russia were really important because they've got so many natural resources and minerals, as indeed Ukraine have got. But if we're putting all our eggs in one basket, we're going to risk losing the Ukraine trade as well, because yes, we've signed this 100-year partnership. When I say we, the government has signed this partnership with Ukraine, but so have the EU signed a deal in 2021, and BlackRock hedge fund signed a major deal, I think, also back in 2021. So part of the UK deal actually supports privatization of Ukraine state assets. So what you've got is Ukrainians on the front line fighting to asset strip their own country. And I think they're becoming more and more aware of that. And this is why the Zelensky government has shut down 12 opposition parties and a lot of opposition media. So no alternative point of view is allowed to be put forward. They've got martial law. Zelensky's got dictatorial powers, even though legitimately he's got no legitimacy as a president, because in the constitution of Ukraine, you cannot delay the elections of the president. You can, under martial law, delay the elections of the parliament, but not the actual president. So it would be interesting to see how lawful any document which he signs actually is. But at the end of the day, we have to look at whatever one may say about President Trump on other issues. I think it's laudable that he's actually trying to bring about a peaceful settlement. And what I think is the opposite to that is Keir Starmer and he, our defense secretary, doing everything they can to put spanners in the works. And they must be seen as quite an irritant by the US government, because what they're doing is giving false hope to those people who want to carry on in Ukraine. And bearing in mind, you're getting thousands of casualties every week. This is one thing Donald Trump right on. It's actually pretty immoral to encourage the continuation of fighting when you've got no end agenda. I mean, you say to the representatives of the current government, what's the purpose of this? They say, well, we'll do it as long as it takes. As long as it takes for what? You know, there's no strategy. We've had over the last couple of years, we've had so-called military experts and other people who are supposed to know about Ukraine and Russia pontificating and giving complete and utter nonsense. And it has been an embarrassment to the British nation that they've given such rubbish. And it's been another instance of brainwashing the UK public like we had during the COVID period. But they want to silence opposition. Because once there's a debate, I mean, you look at Question Time, many other programs, do they ever have the alternative point of view? Is anyone ever allowed to say what is actually in the UK's best interest?
Well, I think that's interesting, because you wrote an excellent article for Unity News Network, of which I must put the link in the description below. And it's an excellent piece. And you answer pretty much all of the questions that people are asking. And one of them, of course, is to do with this 100-year partnership that Keir Starmer has agreed on our behalf. So talk to us a little bit about that and how that may be impacting what's currently happening, because it's evident from your article that this is not in the best interests of British people.
Well, I mean, to start with this conflict, we were told that it was all about defending democratic values, democracy, and so on. And it's been shown that that's been a complete charade. I mean, obviously, they haven't really got any democracy in Ukraine at the moment anyway. But it does seem as though the government was not acting on behalf of the British people, but on behalf of globalist vested interests. So our taxpayers' money, and we, the British public, have suffered with energy prices, cost of living rises, simply to support globalist vested interests who, feel that Ukraine has got very rich pickings for them. Not dissimilar to say what happened in Iraq, when we were told the pack of lies to go to war there, and that was all about oil. And this complete dishonesty to the British public is terrible, but it's been done by 4 prime ministers now, because the Conservatives started this policy. And it's interesting that the UK had been supplying Ukraine with military hardware and training of troops since 2015, way before this operation actually happened. So one of the things that's kept quiet from the public is the past history of this Ukraine conflict, how it built up to how it got to today. And the fact that I think the last thing President Putin wanted to do was have to engage in this, what he called the special military operation, but it's ended up being a pretty full-blown war. But what I think the public entitled is the full truth, the full history, and then let them make their own minds up as to whether they want to spend their money on this. And let's get down to some of the money issues. The government admits that it's 14.8 billion so far. They admit that they're going to give 3 billion per annum. Now that's about the 3 billion is about what they're going to try and save with the welfare disability cuts. But that anyway, there's all that money. And then on top of that, you've got $1 billion costs of the Ukrainian refugees in the UK. And then, as I said earlier, because of the sanctions against Russia, which are basically rebounding on us because the UK population have these rises in costs of energy and living, which the governments have lied and said it's to do with the Ukraine war and Russian aggression. It isn't, because Russia's always been quite happy to trade with the UK. So it's our own government who are punishing the British people, and the public are entitled to have an opinion on this and have their say. And this is why there's this petition out, which has just been launched, because we've had a major foreign policy issue which could take the country into a third world war, which has been done with no mandate whatsoever. Because when the parties had the election in 2024, July 2024, they gave the barest of statements of Ukraine on the lines of, well, we're going to carry on supporting Ukraine. Nothing about the consequences of that and the costs and so on. So this is an issue which does merit having a referendum on, the same as net zero.
It certainly does. And you make a number of brilliant suggestions in your article, very simple ones. They should be straightforward: that the UK will immediately end military and financial aid to Ukraine, that the UK will carry out an audit of all financial and military aid. This is all fair stuff that I, as a taxpayer, I want to know about this. Absolutely, that the UK will commit to seeking disarmament talks with Russia. But as you so accurately point out in this article, the problem appears to be that they're not interested in peace talks, just what you've talked about now. It seems to be that only Donald Trump is the only one that's talking about peace talks. Keir Starmer and the European leaders, they're all about, oh, we're backing Zelensky. It's like they want a continuation, Anthony.
Yeah, the whole thing is chaotic, crazy, reckless, and what the government don't seem to realise is all these sort of things are doing them a lot of damage on the world stage. The status of the United Kingdom government has gone down so much over the last few years, and that is absolutely terrible. When you consider that after the Second World War, the UK still had immense power, still had a major empire, which on the whole was a force for good, but all this power and influence has been depleted, and we now have these situations where our foreign affairs policies are pretty awful. I mean, we've been involved with this bombing of Yemen and the Houthis. We've allowed our bases in Cyprus to be used for bombing on Israel's side in the conflict there. And that's another issue where we should be keeping well out of. We should be acting as a peacekeeper. And where countries stand back and don't do the right thing and be peaceful, it encourages people to be more aggressive, as we've actually seen in Gaza. And of course, those Israelis who want to have peace, they've got nobody supporting them.
Right.
And it's the same in Ukraine. Those Ukrainians who want peace, there's nobody supporting them. It will all come out in the end, and people will have egg on their face. But if we look at the COVID situation and the number of ministers who are out of power since then, including Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, I personally think that Keir Starmer is going to come out of this whole situation very badly, and I don't think he's going to be Prime Minister, because I don't see how any Prime Minister can commit their country in such a way, in a foreign conflict, get it wrong and stay in power. You go back in time when David Cameron lost the EU referendum, he had the grace to resign. But I would say this issue has been more damaging than the issue of the EU. And I say that as somebody who wanted to leave the EU. But this whole issue it turns out that it's wider issues of this globalist control, even of the EU, where things like deciding who can be candidates in the presidential election in Romania, and this interference in the foreign affairs of other countries has gone far too far, because we're getting a dictatorship at the globalist vested interests, and it's something to. Part of it is being exposed in the United States, and that they've seen that their own government funds are undermining their society, and it's something we need to look at here, because a lot of the undermining of society in the United Kingdom is directly or indirectly done by taxpayers' funding via quangos, NGOs, charities, and so on. And it's why we do need to fight back, and people do need to stand for election, because otherwise we just get Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The Conservatives are just as responsible as Labour for the problem.
I think I hear you. I think that's taking us into a conversation that we don't have time for, and that is, and I think you should come back and have that conversation with me about whether there is any relevance at all to be had from politicians these days, because obviously there's lots of problems. We're seeing it with reform now. They were supposed to be the great hope, and all of that infighting that's going on. But that is a longer conversation for another time. Anthony, thank you for joining us. I will put a link in the description to your petition. I know that we do have viewers who are a bit scoffy about petitions, and I am for the most part, but I do think that one thing that they can do is raise some awareness.
Well, there's 30 seconds of people's time, and I would say it's the most time effective and cost effective means.
Is it though? Or is it making people believe that something is happening when nothing is happening? I think that's another wider conversation for us to have.
Loads of protests on, and it's taken up a whole day. And have they achieved anything? I believe we have to do both. And 30 seconds is nothing, and it does support those of us who want to try using that means. So, and we do get debates. I was in the debate with Tess Lorry on the Who and so on. So,
yeah, but those are all people on the same side. We need to be talking to get to people. Do you know what I'm saying? There are issues with that, but I do take your point, which is why I'm going to put a link in the description. Absolutely, I will. Everybody, this is Anthony Webber. He is an independent political commentator and a very good one, as you've just heard. Anthony, take good care of yourself. Hope to speak to you very, very soon.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
Lovely to have you with us. Always lovely to have him with us. Absolutely. Yes. And the thing around here is we don't have to agree with each other to get along, right? I think that's the important thing. We literally don't have to agree with each other to get along. I know that is kind of unheard of in the world that we inhabit, but that's how I work. That's how I function. Oh, yes, indeed. Right. I'm going to welcome in my next guest. This is an interesting conversation, actually, very interesting conversation, part of my heritage. In fact, Neil McEvoy, leader of PROPEL Wales. How are you, Neil?
Very good, Sonia. Very good. You?
Councillor for Fairwater, I'm very, very good. I'm feeling very lively and very sparky. Actually, probably could have a punch up today. I'm in that kind of attitude, Neil. But
I did that yesterday when training. So
oh, really? Right. Okay. I think it's spring. Give spring has sprung. Thank you very much for being here. My mum was, although she was of Irish heritage, she was kind of like raised in Wales, and so I grew up with her Welsh accent around us, and I very much feel, Welsh inside of me as well as Irish, all that kind of stuff. But I think one of the fears that many people have is this whole idea that we are losing our identity, and the Welsh as well. That includes the Welsh.
yeah.
And of course, recently, March the 1st, St. David's Day, it's a national day. I take it that was celebrated fully for the Welsh, right?
No, not at all. I mean, we've had a St. David's Day parade in Cardiff since the early 2000s, up to 15,000 people one year. There was an organised festival when I was deputy leader, flags flying, people on the street. The Labour Party, when they got elected to run the council back in 2012, they abolished the festival. But the march has kept on going. The celebration has continued with no support from the local government. But this year we turned up to town. I think you've got the photograph there.
I do. So I have one with the flags. That's from a previous year that you're talking about, and then the one without flags, looking completely desolate.
Yeah, I mean,
human beings is current, right? That's how they celebrated it. They didn't.
Yeah, the flags went up in 2011. They'd been a feature of the city. It was my decision to put them up, actually. They tried to put Union Jacks up first of all, and I said, no, get those down, get the Welsh flags up. So, it's a popular part of town. It's really vibrant. It's colourful. And we turned up on St. David's Day, the national day of Wales, our patron saint. And there were no flags. There were no banners. And I mean, the council wouldn't even supply a PA system for the march. So I supplied that. And what we're seeing here is it's a deliberate attempt to destroy, undermine, ignore Welsh national identity. The local government, the Labour Party in particular, seem to want to celebrate every other identity on parade, on Pride weekend. The city is full of rainbow flags. Okay, but on our national day, there was nothing. So it's deliberate. In Wales, we've always had to struggle for our national identity since the 16th century. We've had a very English British identity imposed upon us.
Right.
We've kept on going. The language is growing. We're proud of our Welsh nation. But what we have now, it's another attack from a different angle, and it's a globalist attack on, I think, all national identities. I think the English have been attacked for a good while now. And what we're seeing now, I believe, is an attack on Welsh identity from a globalist perspective. And the only thing to do, Sonia, is to take action. So we're forming a community interest company. I'm speaking to businesses in the town. We're having a festival next year. Local government. We're getting on with it. I'm meeting with pub managers. We're going to have a stage. I'm getting in touch with the schools. We'll have a march. We'll have choirs. We'll have a celebration.
And you know what's going to happen when you make a success of it, and you will, because there'll be plenty of people in your community who want to enjoy it in the same way as, like St. Patrick's Day is celebrated as one example. So there'll be plenty of people. But then the council want to get involved again when they can see that there is perhaps money to be made from it, right?
Well, the thing is, I mean, I want the businesses in the centre of town to make a fortune.
Right.
And
Why not?
they're going to be dipping into their pockets, hopefully, to finance this. And the finance won't need a great deal of money. And I think it's going to fly. Well, when I was deputy leader of Cardiff 2008 to 12, and that's when we started the festival. It was great. 15,000 people marching. I mean, vibrancy in the city centre, people spending money, people enjoying themselves, families coming together. We're going to do that again, except it's going to be driven by the private sector. And it's going to be driven by individuals who care. And stuff local government, we know where we stand with them. We're just going to get on with it.
I think one of the problems that we've got now is that when people have their flags, they're automatically assumed to be racist. Now, that in itself is kind of globalist infiltration, that
Yeah.
people can't even align with their own national identity without being referred to as, bigots or
Yeah.
racists or anything like that, right? And I think that's part of the problem. But the thing is, I know something of your background. That's not where you're coming from. Absolutely not. You just want to be able to celebrate your own origin. There's nothing wrong with that, and you shouldn't be demonized for doing so.
Yeah, Sonia, I'm actually a big one for real diversity.
Right,
And
exactly.
real
Not that fake
inclusion.
stuff. Yep.
Okay, I mean, there's a thing funded by the Welsh government, the Privilege Cafe, for example. Give an example of the diversity that they have. It's a safe space for people to discuss white privilege. I'm not white. I wanted to discuss identity, and I wasn't allowed to speak. They banned me before the event even started. So that's the kind of diversity that we see nowadays. It's a diversity where you have to comply. You have to agree. You're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to be individual. And it's a very grey, boring existence. And I mean, the thing about Welsh identity is Cardiff is a melting pot of many, many nationalities. My mother is Welsh, Arab from the Yemen, her father, my grandfather, Irish. My dad is English, of Irish extraction. And there are so many people in Cardiff with different colour faces, different faiths. And what we have in our flag, our language, our national day is a way to unify ourselves.
Right.
It is diverse. It is a way of putting it together. And these globalists, these virtue signalers who, in my opinion, are the biggest racists that I've ever encountered in my life.
100%. Some of these people are ignorant as anything. Absolutely ignorant.
Because they want to put us in a box on you.
Of course they do. Absolutely. And like you, I deal with natural diversity, right? Not the stuff that's enforced on us. Like, for example, somebody said to me recently, somebody had come on the show and they said, it was a gay man, and he said, I usually only get invited onto shows to talk about being gay, whereas you brought me on to talk about news. And that's the bottom line, isn't it, really? It's like, I'm not into boxing people. I'm really not. And a lot of the time, these initiatives, as we know, are not coming from the people. They are coming from the globalists in charge in the local councils, right? So they're the ones who are creating the discrimination and the problems amongst us all.
Yeah, I remember being told once that I was the representative of the BAME community, whatever that is. So I speak 4 languages. I've studied economics, politics. I'm now doing law.
Right.
But for these people, my major qualification was the shade of my skin.
Yeah, how dare they?
And that is absolutely racist. So
yes, it is. The ignorance around this whole thing, when people go, oh, you're a DEI hire. Actually, no. I mean, a lot of the time, the DEI hires aren't what people think. And if you want to look at DEI hires, then surely Elon Musk and Donald Trump are actually DEI hires. One has got autism, the other is a pensioner. I mean, but you know what I'm saying? It's it's just ridiculous, that whole argument.
They're badges. And you have brown people, black people, people with, I suppose, from different minorities, and they're happy to be the badges, and they zip it, they shut up, they make no difference, and they take the money. That's what it's all about. It's finance driven. They're grifters. I think the common term nowadays is, and I'm completely opposed to the DEI agenda. If you need to employ people to focus on DEI in your organization, you don't have a healthy organization.
Exactly.
Take a look at your culture.
Exactly. Okay. NHS with their diversity managers getting £146,000 a year. Like you say, if you need to have somebody overseeing it, there's something wrong with the culture of your place. Perfectly said. Let me bring you on to the second point, because I think this is important. This is to do with you being a counsellor and your work as a politician. This is about lease issues. So former Bulldog pub, right? Always owned by Cardiff Council. So a pillar of the community, because obviously pubs are. What's happened with it?
I mean, the Brains Brewery wanted to get rid of the lease. The pub wasn't making enough money. We wanted it as a community pub. We thought we could make a go of it as a community, as a cooperative, have childcare there. Anyway, Brains, being responsible capitalists, decided that they weren't interested in giving anything back to the community, which had actually given them a damn good profit for year upon year for decades. So what they did, they went to the council, who hold the freehold, and they asked if they could assign the lease, effectively sell the lease. And the council agreed. Okay, now you may not think there's anything wrong with that, but bear in mind in 2015 when it happened, it was May 2015, the council were looking for sites for housing, okay, in different areas. So the policy hadn't changed, but the council agreed. They assigned the lease to NRB Properties Limited. I'm not criticising them because they've done damn good business, okay, but in 2017, so less than 2 years, just over 2 years later, Cardiff Council bought back the lease, okay, had the lease assigned back to them for £550,000. Now, the council didn't want to tell me how much they paid for it. In the end, I said, look, guys, I'll just go to the land registry and I'll get the details from there. So they succumbed and gave me the price. So our council, which is skint, we can't afford to open youth clubs, has allowed a piece of land, the lease for it, to go for 215,000. It's been babysat for just over 2 years at roughly £3,000 a week. Okay, that company then, NRB Properties, I'm told that involving other leases, which I'm looking at, have made a huge profit, 335,000, and more than that, the council then had to pay to demolish the pub, another 95,000, and there's going to be housing put on that site now. It's
not going to be social housing, though, is it?
No, it will be. Yeah, it'll be.
Oh, okay, all right. But you describe this as legalised robbery because there's a lot of shuffling backwards and forwards there, isn't there, at the expense of the Welsh taxpayers?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it, and I'm excluding the company here who are just doing business. But if you look at the council, if you look at the Labour Council, on the one hand, you could say it's complete incompetence. So therefore, somebody should be held accountable with their job and be sacked, which never happens in Wales. And what we seem to have in Wales at Welsh government level, at local authority level, are all these mistakes continuously. You know, property sold at £1 million loss. Oh, God. You know, they said we forgot to do an up-to-date valuation and we lost £1 million. Isn't that a shame? Incompetence. This one, they've lost 335,000 plus a 95,000 for demolition. Absolute incompetence. Or are we looking at something slightly different with the C word in terms of corruption? Have people made from this? Who knows? I don't know. These are questions I'm asking. So I'm not making any formal allegations of corruption, but what I am doing, as I usually do, and it gets me in trouble, I'm shining a light and I want answers. What was the lease advertised? If so, when? Where? Who made the decision to allow the lease to be assigned, effectively sold? Which politician signed it off? Maybe they should have to produce their bank statements, for example.
I think they should.
And I mean, that would need a police investigation. But I mean, when these things happen time and time again, you've got to start asking questions. And what is interesting as well is since I've started asking questions about the leases and county councillors owning leases and county councillors buying properties, Labour and Conservative, I've acquired some new trolls, Sonia, on social media.
I bet you have.
Really interesting. I blocked one today. I thought, you know what? There's no point in arguing or even trying to convince them of anything. So
No. When you respond to these people, you go down to their level. I mean,
yeah, you know me, I do respond actually, which maybe I shouldn't.
Well, every now and again, I'll respond if I just want to give them a good whack. But other than that, for the most part, I ignore them because they're not worth it. I'm
not wasting my time now, so I've blocked a few of them.
And you're asking important questions of public interest. I mean, that is the reality. And I think both of the points that you've raised today are to do with the fact that you're doing your job. You're actually doing your job. This is what people want from you.
Oh, no, Sonia, I'm being nasty. I'm being critical.
Right.
Nasty Neil again. You know,
be careful your window isn't put through again. I remember when you were targeted before when you started speaking out.
Yeah, I've had a shot out actually, so it was a little bit more exciting. I had it broken years ago, several times, but the last one was a bit more exciting because it was shot out, and the police. It wasn't a bullet, but it was. I think it was an air gun, high velocity, and it broke the window, double glazing. So there was quite a lot of power behind the shot. Obviously, police didn't turn up until I made a fuss on social media.
How dare you do your job, Neil? Representing people.
I've had my tyres done for a while, though, Sonia. I've had my tyres done since 2005. But that's not happened for a while. It's probably maybe the CCTV helps. Nasty emails and allegations made on email about me from anonymous emails. I've had them. I've even had a friend identify where they came from, and the police have done nothing. because investigation is not proportionate. Okay, so you can call me and make any allegation about me, upset my family. And in South Wales, because of who I am and have been, it doesn't merit investigation. This is the Wales that we live in. And I mean, England's bad enough, okay? But I tell you what, Wales across the board is worse in every single department, honestly. And it's shocking that I say that.
It's awful. It makes me very sad to hear that. You're always welcome on Wake Up to highlight these issues, because obviously, as people outside the UK often say, how does it all link up? How does Wales link up with England and Scotland and Ireland? And we're all linked, we're all associated. Some of us are devolved, others aren't. But I think for the most part, because we're all under a banner of British, I think that has created a lot of problems. That in itself is a raised identity, hasn't it, Neil?
Yeah. I mean, England should be independent, in my view. I think there should be an English parliament.
Right.
You need to fight for your English identity. What does English being mean now? I'm really struggling to think. I can tell you what being Welsh means, but English, I'm not really sure. I'm not English, although my dad is. But but I mean, to go back to the first point, there is a real drive to destroy national identity, and we mustn't let them do it. So put up your St. George's flags, put up your saltires, put up your Welsh flags, and be proud, and the Cornish as well.
That's right. Absolutely. Neil, thank you so much for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Neil McEvoy. He's one of the good guys. Yes, he's one of the good guys. We have lots to say about politicians around here, Neil, but me and you are cool. And that's because I see you representing people. That's the big difference.
Well, I get elected locally, but I didn't last long in Parliament, did I? I got hammered by the BBC, hammered by the powers that be. But
hammered by all the right people.
Could come back. You never know.
Yes, absolutely. Neil McEvoy, everybody, on a big comeback. Take good care of yourself. Have a lovely weekend, Neil. Lovely to see you. Happy spring. Happy spring. Lovely. Absolutely. I think it's so important. I mean, everybody who watches this show knows I'm not particularly patriotic or any of those things, but that doesn't mean that I denigrate other people who are. It's like, whatever you take pride in, that is cool with me. Absolutely. And I'm not in the business of wanting to disrespect you because it matters to you. And I do think that there is something to be said, actually, for identities. We need national identities. Otherwise, we become this big globalist new world order soup. And that's not going to benefit anybody. When I go to Ireland, I want to hear the Irish speaking. That doesn't mean I don't want to hear other people from different nationalities speaking. But the indigenous population must always be the majority. Otherwise, you will change the face of it. And that's from somebody who believes in multiculturalism. Police are corporate enforcers, says Ray J. They don't work for us anymore. Did they ever? Did they ever? I don't know, is the question, really. Right. What do I want to talk about before I bring in my next guest? You beautiful, glorious, gorgeous people. Did I just bear with me? Bear with me. I'm just going through this. I was sent quite a lot of information about free energy in Africa. And it actually turns out that the guy who was talking about it extensively online has not only been endorsed by the president, but it looks like he's now been busted as a scam. So I just want to send that out to people who've sent me that information. I'm still looking into it. I want to source it. I want to find more about it. I don't want to push anything if there is the potential for it to be a scam, but I do know that free energy exists. And I want to talk to somebody about it. I very much want to talk to somebody about it. We should know about these things, should we not? Isn't that something that we should be looking into? Before we bring in our next guest, actually, my next guest isn't due until 10:15. I have a question, and it'll probably wind some people up, but I'm in the mood where I don't give a. So my question is, when did white people become such fragile little flowers, or is that just the bog standard racists on social media these days? And what is all the poo-ha-ha about that Netflix drama, Adolescence, a new 4-part drama series, which I've watched? Some people need to get a grip. They're like, but the vast majority of stabbings are not white boys. It's not about knife crime. And people are absolutely missing the point. Now, whether that is deliberately or otherwise, it is not about knife crime. It is actually about incel culture, about young boys being indoctrinated online to hate women and girls. And Andrew Tate is absolutely an influence of this. He is certainly influencing more white boys than he's influencing black boys. And the issue of black boys stabbing is primarily reserved for London, where it's to do with gang culture, but it's not to do with incel culture, which is what Adolescence is about. My question to the people losing their heads on social media about Adolescence, and it was trending all day yesterday and still again today, is did you even watch it? Or are you just shouting nonsense because it fits the narrative? Too many people literally these days are pick-me's on social media, always rushing to be kind of handmaidens to racists. Please stop it. Please stop it. It's actually Adolescence, even though I think it's a bit laborious, is a valid and realistic storyline. And whether it fits your fragile sense of self or not, it actually is valid. It's about absolutely the influence of misogyny on young men. It's about how social media can make people react in a way that is untoward, and it's about the devastation on a family. And here's the thing that I think is really important, that a lot of these people who are, they're rushing to be outraged. Why isn't it a black guy? Why isn't it? They're rushing to be outraged. And here's the thing that I think that they're really missing is that if you know anything about TV, you will know that if your main character is white, you stand a chance of greater and higher ratings. That is a reality. People know that in media, and they wanted to make this message go out to as many people as possible and make it as relatable to as many people as possible. And the truth is that there are many young, white, working class boys who are being absolutely failed by the system. They are being left behind, and they have turned to violence. And when I see one example of an absolute brainless commentator is the thug ex-footballer Joey Barton, who tweeted, "Stephen Graham's programme is getting loads of praise, but it seems for knife crime in the UK, he got the young actor wrong. Was he too afraid to cast correctly?" I don't know, Joey. Maybe you should ask your racist white brother who murdered a young black boy. And Joey Barton is a thug. The Bartons are not good examples of good white people. No, they're not. And the fact that he rushes to comment on that when his own brother is doing time for murdering a young black man, it just, the lack of self-awareness is stultifying for me. I just find it shocking these days. Adolescence, I think, absolutely has a part to play in educating people, not to the degree that Keir Starmer is talking about, and that is playing in schools and assemblies. No, that doesn't. It's still fiction. It's still a fictional account, and it's based on several people, which includes one white male and one black male. But, you know, obviously the people on social media who are desperate to be outraged, they're desperate to be outraged. They forgot or deliberately chose to ignore the fact that the director had said about who this was potentially based on. And in fact, it's actually a sort of a combination of lots of different characters, because it's about the incel culture, not about knife crime. And I agree with Jeff Norcott on X, who said, "Good to see the plight of young males getting its occasional moment. So much of the chat is about toxic online influencers. This is undoubtedly relevant, but the bigger outcome on a boy's life is education. Lads have been falling behind academically for years. White working class boys more than most. Yet media discussion largely stays in its safe space of discussing other media." And Sean on X said, "How has a single person taken this to be a series about knife crime? The average intelligence of this platform never fails to amaze." Well, part of the problem is that X, since the takeover of Elon Musk, has largely become a kind of white supremacist Zionist enterprise. That's the reality. It's full of low-level thinkers. I actually had to pull somebody up today. They'd put a video on X and said, a London council has put this out. And it was an image of a white boy, like intimidating a mixed race female. No London council put that out. That was from a BBC drama. So I just said to them, "Could you give me the source, please? Because I'd like to go to the council and get a quote." That person, it's just like, and that is Elon Musk rewards this kind of racism, this kind of nonsense, this kind of misinformation. Well, I don't like it at all. And here's the thing, not one single white female will be saved by you denying that young white boys are also attacking them. Okay, so please bear that in mind. And I'm really disappointed. I'm really, really disappointed. I am aware that people are so rushing to be outraged, and the stereotypes surrounding young black men is just kind of like omnipresent. It's endless. Not all young black men are steamers, right? I can tell you that. In my family, you know, it's like, it's so ridiculous, this level of stereotypes. I'm going to start distancing myself from people. I saw somebody who is kind of a politician in a fairly unknown party, and I saw him tweeting about it, and I just thought, you know what, I am so sick of being around these people. That's what I mean. The truth movement has been infiltrated by people with their own agendas. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in pushing their filthy, disgusting agendas. And so that's the kind of mood you've got me in today, people. I'm so sick of mis and disinformation at the hands of so many racists out there. And I'll keep calling you out. Oh, yes, I will. Oh, yes, I will. Because I do actually believe in the truth. I know some of you struggle with the truth, but I don't. I'm all there for the truth. And that's what I want to do. Right. Clear my throat. I'm going to talk about something much nicer now. Have a look at this. That is a bird box in my garden. And you might be wondering, what are those funny things sticking out the front of it? Well, actually, this was an idea. Every now and again on YouTube, it gets like a good YouTube suggestion. And a video popped up that both my daughter and I both really, really liked. And it was about how if you take the hairs from the combs when you brush your dogs and cats and put it in something, doesn't have to be a bird box. We just happen to have that in the garden, but put it in something, then the birds will come and take the fur and use it for their nest. And they are in our garden. I've been watching them come to this bird box, and you just see them drag the fur out and take off to their nests. I love that idea. I want to be in sync with nature. I don't want to be at war, right? And that includes with everybody, including my fellow men and women. But that doesn't mean that I will ignore their ignorance. But this really appeals to me because this is all kind of about the nature that I love, and it grounds me. But I just thought that was a really lovely idea, and I wanted to share it with you peeps. Yeah, I wanted to share it with you peeps. Yes, indeed, I did. And I'm sure it's going to be of there'll be no question marks about this whatsoever. But I want to talk about the death of Angie Stone. The death of new soul artist Angie Stone still makes little sense. She died on March the 1st, 2025. 4 a.m. local time. She died traveling after a gig. She was hit by a big rig in Montgomery, Alabama. This was after the vehicle had flipped over, and there were 9 people in the van. She was the sole fatality. Of course, people are going to question her death. And especially when you see stuff like this, right? Especially when you see stuff like this. Angie Stone's catalogue up nearly 1,300% in streams, 10,700% in sales, following R&B great's death. And who do you think is making that money, people? The very same record label that Angie called out shortly before her death. And what's even more weird this week is I was sent a video, and there is a woman who is claiming to have rescued Angie from the accident. And I want to see if I've got an image of her. You might have seen this video. It's very interesting. I found it interesting. Let me just see if I can find this woman, see if you can relate to it. Where is she now? Where is she now? Have I got her? I'm sure I had her. There we go. This one, anybody seen this woman on TikTok or on social media? Well, she says she tried to help Angie Stone and others at the scene. So what she said, right? She claims she was at the accident, that she helped get Angie out of the truck, out the upturned van, that Angie was still alive. And then she claimed that Angie was then struck by a truck. She said it was 4 a.m. My daughter and I were driving to Charleston, Carolina for her 16th birthday. Came across the overturned van. There were so many people trying to get out. There were people trying to help Angie out. She didn't at that moment know it was Angie Stone. And this woman said that the woman, Angie, was kind of out of it, but she was alive and she was just like wobbling around. I said, baby, you've got to sit down. Next thing I knew, said the woman, I flew through the air like something had not kind of run over me, but brushed over me. And I ran across the highway to my screaming daughter. I moved the car further up. I rang cops about the accident. There was a pain in my chest because I realized that I had been hit by something, but everything happened so fast. And a lot of it is like question mark, question mark, question mark, almost more questions than answers to this. But I don't think we can just completely discount it, because as I say, there's a number of videos that Angie made before her death. And she said that the devil was very particular in targeting me. She talked about a bacterial infection that she had from being previously injected. She talked about being spiritually attacked. She said that the second part of her ugly truth was when she began researching her royalties and financial statements, only to discover her royalties have all pretty much been stolen. I won't say stolen, she said, correcting herself, but they have taken my money. One way or another, Universal, she said, you are going to have to give me my coins. She finishes the video by saying, on that note, thank you for listening to my testimony and keeping me lifted. I am still here. The devil did not take my life. God spared me and gave me the extra time. I need to get you all straight. And these are the things that she said. And as I say, after her death, in common with every artist, her sales shot up again. And who is benefiting? Angie Stone was in the lion's den when she died. For decades, she had done business with some of the most powerful music industry people and had been ripped off for years. She talked about how she was owed money, not only from the sales and publishing of her own songs, but also from other artists sampling her music, whether as a solo artist or part of the band Sequence. And she talks about how Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson, DJ, had just lifted her music for Uptown Funk. Part of that song literally came directly from her band, The Sequence, right? She never made a penny from it, right? Black artists, particularly black artists, have for decades complained about the white owners, the white leaders of these music industry companies. Obviously, Kanye has come out saying that the Jewish influence is huge and immense. And like Whitney Houston, Angie Stone is another woman who has died by accident at a time when her sales were no longer great and when she was speaking out about the music industry and Universal Music in particular. So who is the boss of Universal Music? And well, it's actually Lucian Grange. And Lucian Grange is this man on his knees in front of Prince William. This is him being knighted. And he has served as chairman and chief executive officer of Universal Music Group since 2010. Lucian Grange has been in the music industry forever and a day. He's a music industry titan. And I've talked frequently about the music industry kind of being like a mafioso. And this is definitely one name, like Clive Davis, that deserves an airing. And a number of you have contacted me and said, please talk about Lucian Grange. Well, here I am. Billboard magazine, which also talked about the huge sales of Angie Stone, named Lucian Grange as the most powerful person in the music business on 4 occasions in the 2010s, and was named the inaugural executive of the decade in 2020. The thing about Lucian Grange, and I think this is interesting, is he's managed to keep himself something of a mystery in the music industry. But what is known about him is he knows how to make money. Oh, yes, he does indeed. And none more so than off the backs of these two, for example. One example, the huge money-spinning beef between rappers Drake and Kendrick Lamar. No matter who wins or loses, Lucian wins either way, because both these artists are signed to him. Both these artists are signed to him. Remember, Kendrick Lamar was at the Super Bowl the other week, one of the biggest, most watched Super Bowls in living history. And what's interesting, of course, is that Drake has sued Kendrick Lamar. And so Drake is essentially also suing Universal Music. And Universal Music have responded by saying, after losing the rap battle, Drake claims that Not Like Us is defamatory. Drake has been pleased to use Universal Music Group's platform to promote tracks leveling similarly incendiary attacks at Lamar. Either way, I've seen these beefs happen before. I've seen them monetized and I've seen how they work. The last big beef was between the East Coast and West Coast, and it ended up with two men dead as a kind of fallout of that. And that was obviously Biggie and Tupac. So Lucian Grange is a winner, chicken dinner, no matter what. And talking of lawsuits, by the way, Lucian was mentioned in a lawsuit regarding Sean Diddy Combs, who, of course, is at this moment in time locked up in a Brooklyn jail and waiting his trial to do with trafficking and other egregious charges. The lawsuit that named Lucian was dismissed last May. There's lots to be said about Lucian Grange. In July 2024, shareholders approved a pay package of $128 million for him. And also, talking about money, Lucian Grange likes to financially support genocide. Like fellow music industry mogul Simon Cowell, Grange has supported Friends of Israel Defense Forces. He's been at their galas. So this is somebody who keeps himself as below the radar as humanly possible. And people like Taylor Swift consider him, have considered him a great ally. He is absolutely a music industry prop, no doubt about it. And while we can't start accusing this man of being responsible for the death of Angie Stone, we can absolutely categorically say that she criticized the fact that she wasn't receiving money from his Universal Music Group, only to die literally shortly afterwards in weird circumstances that still don't make any sense. So what we're understanding now is, like Princess Diana, she was still alive at the scene and then was struck by apparently an 18-wheeler truck. It's so odd. Can anybody make any sense of this? Can anybody make any sense of this? Spirit cooking Abramovich. Do not talk to me about that psychopath. No, Marco, I have to agree with you. People don't get to the positions like Cowell without obeying the agenda set by top of the tree. So the point about Lucian Grange, the difference between him and Clive is that even though they are literally like top of the music industry tree, Lucian Grange has made sure to keep his tracks well covered. Anything I may allege about him now would literally just be an allegation without a foundation that I could source. But there is a lot that's being said out there online about him. And I'm not going to reference it because I literally can't source it. And I don't want to start saying stuff like that. But here's what I do know is that generally you don't reach the top of the music industry tree without being an absolute bastard. Right, at the least. And you also don't get knighted unless you are part of the establishment pushing the agenda. So I think these things are curious and interesting. And I know that he's hideously rich, hideously wealthy. I know that there are a number of casualties behind him, not least Angie Stone. And that alarms me. That concerns me deeply. I'm so over artists being exploited by people like this. Bear in mind what I just said. He got $128 million for 2023 alone. SAS1, Clive Davis did send a message on Angie's funeral. And also, by the way, I'm not particularly keen about what is happening around Angie Stone's funeral, right, or around Angie Stone at this moment in time. In fact, I see that Monique used it as a way to kind of reignite her argument with Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry, big Hollywood producer, black Hollywood producer who often gets called out by black people for being a sellout. Tyler Perry was one of those Hollywood men who was prepared to put on a dress, right? And repeatedly so. And when Dave Chappelle said when he was asked to do it, and he said that he noticed that a lot of black men were being asked in Hollywood to dress up as women and he wasn't prepared to do it, but Tyler Perry was. And Tyler Perry gets huge budgets, Netflix budgets, and that actually Channel 5 in the UK has a whole additional channel which is dedicated to his productions. Anyway, Tyler Perry has never really been a great one for being there for people like Angie Stone or others, but he came out and he was like, yeah, being abused and it's not right, it has to end. Well, you are probably part of the problem, Tyler. And I don't know how to say this other than, can people stop being a sellout? Because music is important. Music is life. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but I love music and I do love real music. I really, really do love real music. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't allow for some AI, even though I know it's not AI anymore. I'm changing that description. But the point is that I come from a musical family. I love music. We need to honor musicians. We need to pay them properly. We need to stop having them ripped off. We need better people to be overseeing their contracts, because I don't know if you've ever seen a music industry contract, but what happens is that the musicians pay for everything. They pay for everything. They pay for the video, they pay for promotion, they pay for everything, and everything has to come back out of their royalties. And the record companies are just there reaping the benefits. And this whole thing of musicians being exploited and then killed because they dare to speak out. And I'm not ruling that out with Angie Stone. I'm not ruling it out, but it has to stop. It really has to stop. So I will be continuing my exploration into Lucian Grange, as well as Clive Davis, as well as other people that I consider to be at the top of the music industry tree and who may not be all they seem. It's one big club, Robert. And you know the next part of that? That's right. We're not part of it. Double tap screen. What's going on? What am I supposed to be doing? Is either ripped from old music or used to dumb us down. It is. And can we have a happy birthday for Sean in the comments? Sean, was it your birthday yesterday or today? Happy birthday, Sean, a regular in our comments. Thank you for being here, sweetheart. We very much appreciate it. Robert, do not get me started. Michael Jackson, Phyllis Hyman, Whitney, Angie, Prince. It goes on. And all of these people have spoken out about the music industry. And then they found themselves over. It's done. Done. Guten Morgen, Mr. Mac. Guten Morgen to you. Right, I want to bring in my next guest. And she is actually somebody who is a regular in our comments. And now you're going to get to see her because she is upset. She's upset. And I think with full justification, really. So let us bring her in. Here she is. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Sonia.
Rachel Kleinik, everybody, designer and deeply concerned mother. Rachel, I'm going to talk to you about this, the threat of these disability cuts. We're being told that up to 1.2 million disabled people will lose thousands in this so-called UK welfare overhaul. Now, as many people know, I know that this
is... Sorry, can I just... I've got an urgent... Somebody's just talking to me at the side for something urgent. Is it urgent?
Guys coming to look at the copper or something.
No, tell him to go away. Sorry.
Tell him to go away. That's all right, sweetheart. That's what makes us so live around here.
Sorry,
right?
I had to drag my teenager out of bed this morning for technical issues.
Bless your heart. So here's the thing, right? Is what I really want to know is because you did this, you said, first of all, I don't know if I feel okay about coming on the show. And in the end, we had a conversation and you were like, yeah, I'm ready for it now. But you did a Facebook rant and actually it really upset me. Not because you did a Facebook rant, but the fact that you had to do it in the first place, right? You said it's been a dark night of the soul for me this weekend, seeing such misinformation. Now, Rachel, you know as well as I do that in order to be able to carry out these attacks on sick and disabled people, they have to demonize sick and disabled people, first of all. So that's what you're experiencing. Take it away. How is this impacting you and why?
Yeah, so the cuts generally, like you say, really upsetting, and we'll go on to why that is and what they provide for disabled people. But just seeing the misinformation online about what people get and the demonisation of disabled people and the division it's caused. And I mean, I don't think it's an accident, Sonia. I really don't. I feel like this has been driven, as it has been forever, really, with disabled people. So the claims that I've seen are just ludicrous. People getting cars for bedwetting, getting funding for cars, which, yes, but it's not actually as simple.
It doesn't work like that.
Alison Pearson saying that... well, why are these people getting cars? They're not even adapted cars. Tells me how little these people spewing all this vitriol know about our lives and what we need benefits for. And it's interesting that they're targeting the PIP as well, because that's not actually a means tested benefit. It's
personal independence payments, right?
Yeah.
What is PIP?
So it's used for all sorts of things, but I mean, actually, it's one of those benefits that is to help people looking for jobs or having a job. So it could be used for somebody who, if you become disabled in later life or something and you still want to work, but you need a mobility, help with mobility, or you've got a mortgage that you've been paying for all your life and you've worked really hard, and then suddenly hardship befalls you because you've had to reduce your hours or something. it's a bit of a safety net, really. That's the way I see it. And also for maybe young people who would really like a job, but realistically are not going to be able to have a job that will pay for their cost of living, but for dignity and, you know, for their own mental health, healthy mental abilities. Yeah, it's for things like that, and to help them get around and help them work. But I mean, that's just like, you know, that's for the birds, really, because what really infuriated me was just the general hatred that was aimed towards disabled people. And I mean, you know, we've all got people that we don't like, groups of people that we think are a threat to us. But really, you've got to be the lowest of the low if you are picking on disabled people. And the fact that it's a Labour government, and I'm like you, Sonia, I'm politically homeless, you know, but I think a lot of people, it's taken them a long time for the penny to drop, but they're finally seeing that these people are not on our side. Then, you know, that whole saying about they came for me, but I wasn't that, so I didn't speak up. I've been speaking up since the pensioners, you know, I've actually been speaking up since they slapped DNRs on disabled people during lockdown. That terrified me. When the assisted suicide bill came in.
That's right.
I was just like, this is really, really sinister. And, you know, you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, whatever. But I think it's, you know, the broader picture is terrifying for disabled people.
It is terrifying. And I have to just go back to that demonization. It's such lazy. I mean, I kind of like, on one hand, I accept it when people on social media say it, because people are just looking for clicks and likes, even though they're being idiotic without checking the facts. But when I actually see journalists tweeting that people are getting 54K for a BMW for having ADHD, I want to go and, I mean, I can't even tell you what I want to go and do, Rachel. It makes me feel very
if they've got a 50k car on disability, I mean, also the pitfalls are just staggering. I mean, they're just,
that is the thing. My
I've
brother
got Louis here now. I've got my son's here, and it's like 7 pages long. That's the results, not the actual form. The form is like massive, and you have to score points in each section. And I mean, my son, he doesn't walk very well. You know, there's many things. This is the complexity of disability. There's many things that impact his mobility. He's got a hearing impairment. He's got a visual impairment. He has low muscle tone from his Down syndrome. He was born very early at 31 weeks, so he's never really recovered from that physically. He gets nothing for that physical, nothing on that physical, you know, section. Right. So there's another section to the mobility, which is the cognitive ability, which is, can he plan a journey? Can he get the bus on his own? Things like that. He scores okay in that. But I mean, the fact that he gets enough, that's how tight you know, that's how strict they are. Right. Even the paediatrician that last saw him said, oh, he really needs, you know, he needs these Doc Martin boots to kind of steady him and everything. 200 quid a pop. And this is what PIP's for. It's for those things that when you're disabled, disability is an expensive business, right? And I know that's not everybody's fault, you know, or out there, taxpayers, but I pay tax as well. Right. You know, a lot of people, parents of disabled children pay tax. We all pay tax. And it's just that little bit of help. You know, everything is so much more expensive. It's a bit like a wedding, you know, you go and buy a bouquet.
I've seen it, Ray. Just to say, I've seen all this close up. You should know, because my brother had a kidney transplant. My brother is now passed, sadly, but my brother had to go through all this. My brother was a very strong working man. He worked all his life, and they actually couldn't, he really struggled to walk, and he did eventually need mobility. But I know how difficult it is to get. So this idea that we have politicians who should know better saying how there's an overdiagnosis of mental health conditions, how easy it is to get. And I want to go back to your son, because I think that's important. Obviously you refer to him as L, and I'm all good with that. And you say every day he walks the 250 or so yards from his classroom to my car, and me and his teacher both hold our breaths. Every day you are in fear that he's just going to just tip over at any second.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, he falls all the time, sometimes twice a day. And you know, he's 16 now, so me getting him up and everything, and he's pulled me over before, you know, when I've been trying to help him, not intentionally, but you know, just things like that people just do not understand. And that's it, because he can technically walk 250 yards. They say he's not got a mobility issue, and not a physical mobility issue. And it's absolutely ridiculous, because we can't, you know, we really question whether we can do journeys with him. You know, if it's too far for him to walk, we just won't do it, you know, because it's just too exhausting, really, especially if I'm on my own. If I've got my husband with me, then that, you know, it's not too bad. But, you know, things like holidays are very difficult. Yes, we are allowed holidays sometimes. We're a normal family. You know, the fact that people just begrudge anything, they think that you're getting something that they're not getting, and they hate it. And the amount of people, I mean, I've seen it with disabled parking, you know, the disrespect when people just park in a disabled spot. Even when I've got a blue badge for Louis, and even if I'm really rushed or whatever, I haven't got Louis with me, I've never used that badge for that parking space, because I know if I ever parked illegally in there with that badge, someone's going to lose out. Someone's going to have to go home because they can't get to the shop or whatever. It's, you know, and the fact that people just think it's okay to do that, no one polices it either. It's really disgraceful, you know.
And we're not looking at the big picture. And I think Stephen is capturing it here. And that is, they made people's mental health a lot worse 5 years ago with lockdown. And of course they did. And we know that there's been an increase in the social security, the welfare budget since lockdown. And we're not tackling these things. What happened that led people into this situation where they no longer felt able to work? We're just not looking at the root causes of the problems, are we? And as they're pointing out in the comments, the Lords get £300 a day just to show up, right? And all the subsidized food and everything, and yet we are begrudging disabled people a little bit of quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, going back to things about chronic illness, I've suffered from chronic illness myself, and I know quite a few people who do, and I know how hard it is to get yourself to a point where you can work, or, you know, it's so terrible. And I remember reading about this awful family that decided their child was lying about her chronic fatigue syndrome, so they chucked her in a swimming pool to snap her out of it. Well, that is exactly what the government's doing. You know, they just, I mean, how they think that removing safety nets is going to get people back into work is ridiculous. And also, Sonia, you know, the job market at the moment is really, really tough out there. Able-bodied people are struggling. So where are these jobs that everybody's going to get as well? You know,
exactly. It's all about playing to the crowd. That's what it is. Karen, I'm very sorry to hear this. Karen said, my daughter had ADHD. When her PIP was due for renewal, she would melt down. Sad to say, she is no longer here. And that's what we're talking about, really. It's like, what price life? I pay my taxes because I want to support vulnerable people. I don't want to support people swinging the lead, but that is not the majority of people here. We know that fraud is a tiny percentage. It's less than 1%.
Yeah, and that's another thing, you know, when I put that Facebook post up, I had people saying, oh, but there are people who, you know, defraud the system. Well, there may well be, but that's not us. You know, that's beside the point. And I hope those people that are defrauding the system are pulled up about it, you know, absolutely go after them. And I saw another journalist online saying, well, these people who, you know, they don't seem to be very upset about people defrauding the system, you know, they're defending them. We're not the ones doing it. Why should we defend people that are nothing to do with us? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's you know, mad. This has all been set up. This is another divisive attack on us. And because it's like, okay, so we've got them fighting against each other about immigration. We also need to have them fighting against sick and disabled as well, and seeing them as skivers and spongers. I've seen it all before, Rachel. They literally did this in 2012 when they wanted to bring through their amendments, the welfare reform bill. It's a playbook. That's what it is.
I know, and I do think it's really, you know, it is linked to the the assisted suicide bill. I really do. I think, you know, what are we going to do if these people can't work and literally cannot work? What, are we going to put them in institutions, make them so depressed that they want to take I call her grim dead getter. You know, are we going to take her up on her offer of assisted dying? It's crazy. And you know, what sort of society are we living in where we can't look after our elderly and our disabled. It should be a priority. And people keep saying, oh, where's the money coming from? I see our government, you know, sorry, pardon my French, pissing money up the wall, right, left and centre, even within the disability community. I mean, they've wasted, I've got a figure here, you know, they drag parents through tribunals to get their children's school places. I think it was 500 million or something, cost of dragging parents through that procedure. And I've got a friend who, she adopted a lad when he was 3. He'd already been through 3 homes, so you know, already very traumatized, and so he's got a lot of behavioural issues because of that. And the school that he was in could not meet his needs, and this is another thing, we'll come to taxes in a moment, but they couldn't meet his needs, so they tried to get him into another school, and the council just dragged them through tribunal after tribunal. They kept saying, yes, these people should get this school that they wanted, and it wasn't a posh school or anything, it was just one that, you know, had a specialist unit. And they dragged them through it. I remember the summer, it was terrible. Every other week they were back in this tribunal. And ultimately they won the case. But by that time, the place had gone within that school that they wanted, and they had to send him to a private school. And that wasn't their choice. And it was a private specialist school, you know. So all that money wasted. And to be honest, they couldn't meet his needs there either. So it was a complete waste of time. But yeah, appeal after appeal they went through. And that, the cost of that, God knows what that is. And I mean, even like, you know, things that I see them wasting in my life, I got a letter from the tax bill saying that I hadn't submitted my PAYE employee. And I was a bit confused because I am self-employed. And it turns out that Louis gets a little bit of respite, and we only get that because we care for our mother-in-law as well. But it turns out that they didn't register our person who does the respite, so they've had to pay a fine to the tax office. I mean, this is all coming out of our money, so our tax has been used to pay for all these mistakes. If that was my business, you know, it'd have to come out of my pocket. Nobody's accountable. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's obscene. I see that MPs have just voted for themselves to have a 2,500 pay rise, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it's just extraordinary. I almost wonder sometimes, Rach, whether they do this stuff, and our guests have suggested this before, whether they do it to provoke us, because
to wind us up. I know.
It's awful. It's awful. I cannot bear the attacks on sick and disabled people just because I have so much knowledge of the truth, and I hate lazy journalism. And so I think actually that what you're talking about is, it's not just about the money; it's also about the demonization of humanity.
Yes,
what price life, really? And I think we really need to look at that, and we need to push back against it, don't we? When we see people demonizing and these lies, these absolute lies, because like you say, if somebody chooses to spend all their pip in one direction, that's their business, because the whole point about it is it's supposed to make you independent. So whatever it is that makes you independent, that's your business.
Exactly.
Right?
And, you know, when we had our son, I didn't know that I was having a child with Down syndrome. And the initial shock, you know, this is the other thing that people don't realise, that at any point in their lives, they too can become disabled, or they can have a child that's disabled, or their child can become disabled. And I don't wish that on anyone, but that's a reality. And when it happens to you, all you want to do is have as normal life as possible. You know, have a normal family life and get through it as best you can. And that's what these payments are for, to try and make life just that little bit easier. I mean, the other thing that they were talking about is taxes. It's hilarious, the whole taxi thing. Oh, these kids get taxis to school. Well, yes, because the school in their local area probably can't care for them in the right way. So that, you know, I know kids who have to travel 15 miles a day or go all the other side of a county to find a suitable school. And that is not the parents being picky going, I want this school, I want that school. It's people saying, no, we can't provide the care that your child needs. We can't meet their needs. And by law, every child is entitled to have education that will meet that child's needs. That's enshrined in law. And so it's not about parents being picky. And the other thing I'll say about taxis, it's horrendous. We don't use a taxi. We are entitled to use a taxi, but I won't use it because we used it once and the whole thing was so stressful. You know, they rock up late. I was having to be at work you know, over the other side. It's just terrible. And also, you don't know who's getting in the taxi. The escorts are supposed to be vetted. You're putting vulnerable children in a car with people you don't know. Sometimes they'd even turn up without the escort and say, we haven't got an escort today. Can you come in the car with us? You know, like the whole thing is really stressful. So it's not a luxury. Nobody wants to do that.
No.
And they also sell these contracts. The councils sell these contracts to the lowest bidder. So you're not going to get people who are really conscientious. You know, sometimes you do. We've been lucky with a couple of the, you know, the kind of taxi people. But then they swap over. You've got no choice about it. And then suddenly you've got this new taxi company who do not give a damn. Sorry, my cat's about to jump up. But here she is. Yeah, so it's just, I mean, like how people, they just don't understand, and even people I know willfully do not understand. You know, you try and explain them and they don't really want to know. They want to believe that you are somehow getting something that they're not. And
that's right.
We'll take my son's disability then, if that's what you want. You know, you deal with that.
Exactly. We need to stop this. I think you summed it up very well in your post when you said in 2025, at the very least, I want to live in a society that prioritizes the care of our sick, elderly and disabled. And as we've clearly seen that, I mean, Tories are always at it, but I didn't expect better from Labour, but the whole idea is they're supposed to be the party of the people, right? I never expect any better from Keir Starmer. I mean, he's clearly not a socialist as it's supposed to be as such, but this is unconscionable and it's unacceptable. And I just ask you out there, people, and I'm sure many people watching this are clued up enough, but don't allow that lazy rhetoric to continue. These people, for the most part, bear in mind, I think it was at the last count, 0.5% is actually fraud. The rest is legitimate people. These forms aren't easy. It's a hell of a headache. It's a nightmare for people involved. Rachel has outlined it. You've articulated it so beautiful. I have no idea why you were nervous, Rach. You've expressed it so brilliantly. And I agree with Woodburn that the trade unions absolutely sold out disabled workers. The failure always round on these issues. And somebody said it's Germany 1930s again, May Day did. And it is very much the whole kind of useless eaters thing. It is. Yeah.
And another, to that point, Sonia, as well, I mean, I've been aware that there is a eugenics kind of culture in this country for a very long time. I worked with the National Down Syndrome Association talking to midwives when the NIPT came in. That's the non-invasive prenatal testing, right? I'm totally pro-choice. I totally understand. I didn't know that I was having our son, or that our son was going to be disabled. And do you know what though, Sonia? I'm glad I didn't know, because I didn't have to make that decision.
That's
and
right.
You know, I wouldn't swap him for the world. But anyway, aside from that, I understand. But women, the people that I spoke to when I was doing those talks, some of the women were coerced. They had to get specialist midwives who were sympathetic to their desire to continue their pregnancy. And even at 39 weeks being told, you can still terminate if you want to right now. They will terminate a child with Down syndrome up to 40 weeks when it's in the birth canal. And Sonia, only in 2020 did they stop doing that for children with cleft palate. So I don't know.
It tells us so much.
Whatever you feel about terminations and disability, that is barbaric, in my opinion. You know,
it is absolutely. I mean, the comments say it all, really. Lisa said it's murder. Shalini said, "Oh my, that's awful." Maria said inhuman. Oh, and God, murderers. It's awful, horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Thank God for somebody like you, who's prepared to stand up and fight the good fight. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you this morning.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course you can.
Absolutely. Thing, right? You know, we really value our disabled loved ones. And when I come on and moan about things, I'm not moaning about him, I'm moaning about the system. And we have historically had a really good system in this country. I know we moan about it, it's difficult, but I do appreciate that we get to send our kids to lovely schools. Louis goes to a fantastic school. Staff are lovely, people are lovely. And to those journalists who are spouting this shit, they, you know, why don't you go volunteer in a school for a day and just see how hard they work? Because it's always the mums of disabled people who volunteer to do the groups. We, you know, we do a lot of stuff on our own. they're not lazy. They're the most hardworking people. Not only do we look after our families and have jobs and everything, we also volunteer, we help each other out, we support each other. They know nothing about that community. And,
Absolutely.
you know, he's not a burden, my son. He's wonderful. And I just want him to have the best life that he can. And he should really have that in this day and age.
Absolutely, he should. And so say all of us. We love you, Rach. Thank you very much for being here this morning and articulating so powerfully why we all need to have a bit more compassion and a bit less of this kind of nonsense demonizing crap that's taking place. Everybody, this is the very wonderful Rachel Kleinig. Take good care of yourself, Rach. See you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
What a star, absolute star, because it's very hard because her son, I don't know if you call that, her son, Louis, who she didn't name him afterwards, was born with Down syndrome and so has all these other attendant issues as well. The idea that she's not even sure how many times a day he's going to fall over, that would be so heartbreaking for parents. So heartbreaking. I don't, you know, I can't speak for anybody else. I'm very fortunate. My daughter was born well. She's always been well, thank God. But I have seen other parents struggle, and I've seen people struggle with this disability issue. And I think it is absolutely unconscionable, this attack on sick and disabled people, again, and our elderly. Literally the three groups that so-called Labour is supposed to protect, that's the ones that they attacked. It makes me sick. Shalini said she's so lovely. If I met her, would give her loads of hugs. Yeah, Maria, happy to talk about carers. My sister was a carer in a care home. I was a carer for a period of time. When I was studying psychology, I wanted to go and see what was happening on the ground. That was a bit of a shock to my system. And I worked in a care home for the elderly. And I also worked in a care home for people with very, very serious learning difficulties. I ended up actually leaving there because one man, Clive, was struggling, and he had a number of problems, including gigantism. And I actually had to bathe him, and I can confirm that he truly had gigantism. And but he actually attacked me. He trapped me in a corner, and he said he wanted to rip out my effing eyeballs and stand on them. I had to get out of there. Then I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. So care homes are a whole other topic. They should have cameras in every room and every walkway. And I've seen people who have been campaigning for cameras in care homes, but there's all these kind of like data protection issues going on. Peter said, I have been a support worker with adults with learning disabilities. They were great. Yes, Peter, for the most part, absolutely. And but honestly, when Clive turned on me, and he didn't mean to, he was completely beside himself once he'd done it. But I was by that point so terrified. And I think I actually had a form of PTSD because he actually trapped me in a dark corner. And I was terrified. And he kind of loomed over me because he was tall as well. It was not an easy job. Mrs. Pirate doesn't understand why they can't have cameras and in nurseries. They do have cameras in a lot of nurseries now. But again, it's this whole data protection issue. But here's the thing is that if I had somebody in a care home, I would be prepared to sign some kind of waiver saying, yeah, absolutely, bring them in. And sorry, I've just left yeah, there you go. I don't understand. Yeah. And I'd be happy to have cameras, but some people aren't. It's odd. TD, my daughter is in care in the community, starting her nursing degree in September. So she has options to leave UK. We need good ones. We need good nurses. Please stay. Plain Station said if they cared about people in care, they'd pay carers a proper wage, not with chocolate buttons. Fact. Absolute fact. Right. Let us move on, shall we? Can you see that the whole kind of net zero thing is a tumbling? It's tumbling big time. Ed Miliband, who obviously is in charge of the UK's net zero madness, they're struggling now. They are now struggling because now they are starting to understand that. So what happened was there's this leaked report, a leaked Whitehall report. Whitehall is the area associated with Parliament. So a leaked Whitehall report, which actually reveals that the whole kind of net zero approach actually risks wiping off 10% of economic growth by the end of the decade and triggering a financial crash. Right? It's not a public report, but it was leaked. And so what would happen is the UK's national debt would actually rocket rocket more than ever. And here's the thing, is that they are now saying that none of these things are achievable by 2030. There's that year again. And so they've now moved the dial to 2050. So we still got this madness hanging over us, which gives them even more time to make an absolute killing. But this report is very, very clear. And that is it, it talks about there's going to be that potential hit to GDP, but also there is going to be a significant loss in employment. Well, look, we have on the one hand these heinous individuals in Labour saying more people need to get out to work. But the fact is that their punishing net zero agenda is actually making people unemployable and unemployed. That is the reality, because what's happening is there is a disruption in the workplace regarding the net zero. I've actually got a quote here. Let's just see what it says. It says, the report actually directly says, disruption caused by the transition could result in unemployment and skills mismatches with negative knock-on impacts for growth, productivity, and the ability to reach net zero. It's a lie. The whole thing is a lie. And even if they attempted to achieve it by 2030, they said that 10% of GDP, which is obviously how we measure, 1% annually over 10 years on average, will have been subtracted from consumption. This is a lose-lose always round. That is the reality. That is absolutely the reality. And what's also happening is that hundreds of billions of pounds, which the report revealed, is that hundreds of billions of pounds of assets around the world are literally being retired before the end of their shelf life in order to be able to accommodate the net zero agenda. So whatever that is, technology, etc., being retired. What an absolute waste of money, but somebody's making money from it. But it is good to see that report that was leaked, because people are actually sick and tired about it, really sick and tired about it. And the problem is, once it starts to affect public spending in such a very obvious way, which is obviously the GDP, then that's when you'll finally get politicians who are prepared to speak out about it, but not a second before. Birthday boy Sean says net zero is a scam. Just another massive transfer of wealth from us to the 0.1% more WEF UN agenda. Indeed, but it's getting busted slowly but surely. And thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that, frankly. I want to reflect on somebody who's influenced me, and that is Jordan Maxwell. I'm sure there's lots of people in the comments who are aware of Jordan Maxwell. He died on March the 23rd, 2022. So that's 3 years ago this weekend. And Jordan Maxwell was kind of like a renowned researcher in the occult, symbolism. A lot of the stuff that I learned to do with symbolism in music and in movies came from Jordan Maxwell. He's influenced many, many people. And he's like, one of the originals. And one of these great pieces of work is when he talks about the secret life of symbols. And obviously we know that symbolism is in so much, especially when it comes to the parasitical elite. They like it, they need it, they kind of feast off it. But one of Jordan's books, which was about symbolism within movies, and it actually, what it does is it looks at secret societies, because that's what we're dealing with here, right? We're dealing with secret societies. When it comes to symbolism and Illuminati, you can call it what you want, but it's secret societies, almost all bound together by Freemasonry, and honestly, not the Freemasons who are in your local area raising money for wheelchairs or whatever, right? Generally, these people don't actually know what's going on in the top tiers of Freemasonry. But once you start to get to Hollywood Freemasons, like a Walt Disney, for example, then you're talking about like a 33-degree Freemason, and that's big stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that Jordan Maxwell was prepared to take on. He wrote many, many books, 50 plus years of research. And he looked at many things, including UFOs, what's that say? Yeah, I mean, all manner of different world mysteries, but a lot of it esoteric research. He has influenced many, many people. But I think the main thrust of Jordan Maxwell's work was how the world has been controlled by powerful people, a small amount of powerful people for a very long time. They are the top of the top, Marco. Yes, they are. And who is... because I've got that book that was written about Freemasonry, and then the guy died about 18 months afterwards. But is the Duke of Kent, I think, is the top Freemason in the UK, if I've got that right. And Stephen loves studying mysteries, but I think that Jordan Maxwell doesn't always get as much credit as he deserves, actually. I think he deserves more. And I just wanted to recognize and acknowledge him. And I'll probably see if Mark Devlin wants to come in for a talk on Jordan Maxwell, because I'm pretty sure that Jordan Maxwell will have influenced Mark Devlin and other people like that. And so believe me when I say a lot of the knowledge that we have regarding symbolisms in the music industry, regarding symbolisms in films, it is emanated from the great researcher that is Jordan Maxwell. And he's been dead 3 years this weekend. And Michael Tazarian, I'd love to. Kenneth, anybody got a contact for him? Let's bring him in. The Brotherhood. Absolutely. The Brotherhood indeed. And good morning to Tracy. Tracy wrote into the show. She said, I came across Wake Up in December and I haven't missed an episode since. I like that. Thing is, right, I know I can tick people off. Yeah, it's part of my character. Because I say it how I feel it, or I say it how I see it. And people don't always, that can rub people up the wrong way. But I also do invite that from other people, which is why sometimes when I'm talking to somebody and I disagree with what they say on here, I don't necessarily pull them up on it, because I do believe that people are also entitled to have opinions and ideas that are contrary to what I think, right? But anyway, thank you, Tracy. I truly appreciate that. She says she hasn't missed an episode since. This is where I feel sane, because the world around us is mad. I can relate to so many topics on your show and no longer feel alone in my thought process. You're very welcome, Poppet. Very, very welcome. And Tracy took a picture today. She said, I don't know if this is chemtrails or not. This was at 7 a.m. today. And I thought I saw this literally just before I was coming on the show. It was the last email and it just popped up as I was shutting down my email account. And I just saw her name pop up. I was like, oh, what's that about then? Let me see if I can look at the image. This is what Tracy sent. You can just see it, 7 a.m. this morning. Now, I don't know whether they are or they aren't, Tracy, telling you honestly, but I do think that the kind of like the curves and is quite interesting, because it looks a little bit weird. I think some of them definitely are. But I'm very glad that you've captured the sky, because one thing that I do know is that the sky ain't what it used to be. I had that from the Masonic Lodge. What's that? They are chems, says Soul Sound. Right. Soul Sound has said, yes, absolutely, they are chems. And Tracy wrote in also to talk a little bit about Lucy Letby. She said it's a cover-up for the dire state the Countess of Chester was allowed to be run. I had both my babies there in 2012 and 2016, at which time there was already reports in local newspapers about a higher than usual number of baby deaths, but nothing was seen to be done about it. There are so many wrongs in this case. I could go on all day. Couldn't we all, sweetheart? Couldn't we all? Miscarriage of justice or what? But very interesting when somebody has such insider knowledge when they've actually given birth in the same hospital, which of course now is subject to a manslaughter investigation that may involve other members of staff. Of course, what happened this week, we did the live stream outside the Lucy Letby inquiry and the Lucy Letby inquiry. The Lucy Letby's barristers asked for a pause, and I think it was only the hospital that had also supported the idea of a pause because of this kind of like manslaughter investigation that's now going on. But everybody else was like, no, we're not advancing that argument, and that included the Nursing and Midwifery Council, who kicked Lucy Letby right under the bed, as it were. And I just think, going back to what we've said before about kind of like these agencies and authorities and everything, who are they actually representing? That's what I want to know. So thank you, Tracy, for writing in. I truly, truly appreciate that very, very much. And donators, thank you so much as ever. And I will be releasing next week the next behind the scenes video. This is where I go behind the scenes of whatever it is I'm doing. And actually, I'm going to go behind the scenes of the Lucy Letby, of me going to Liverpool for Lucy Letby. And anybody who donates to this show, be that on Patreon or in the comments or whatever, I will absolutely be happy to send you a behind the scenes video. But what happens a lot of the time on Super Chat is it doesn't give me your email address. So if you want a behind the scenes video, please write to me, soniapoulton@sky.com. But thank you to our donators, Helen O'Carroll, lovely Helen. I've met her before. She bought me loads of gifts before. Where's my lovely hand cream, which I adore, Helen, by the way. I adore. She's a star. But thank you so much. And thank you all to the Super Chat as ever. I've got some names here: Gina and Jenny and Lenticular Cloud and Ficus and Fred and Kravos and Shikesh. And how much information do you want? well, as much as you got, frankly. So thank you all. I very much appreciate it. Thank you, Mrs. Pirate. Thank you all. You're all stars. What happened, Deborah? Who was trying to recruit? Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Right. You know what I want to talk about? People. I want to talk about the fact that we are in spring. We are in spring. And I'm absolutely aware that a lot of today's show has been about kind of like frustration and anger and idiocy and all that kind of stuff. There is still much to be said about wonderful, beautiful new beginnings. And I want to bring in this wonderful image, which lovely Sally made for me. Thank you, Sal. You're a star. Of course you are. Let me just see if I can put it. Oh, no, that's not where I want it. That's probably not where I want it either. And that's definitely not where I want it. Well, let's try that again, shall we? Let's try that again. There you go. It'll go there. New beginnings. Letting go of the past. Thank you, Kath. Very much appreciate that. And I think that now is absolutely the time to reflect on where you have come from. And there's different ways to go around that, right? Lots of people use some kind of form of divination, whether that is tarot, or some people turn to religion and reflect on where they come from a kind of more religious perspective, religious, spiritual, whatever it is, religious, spiritual, psychological, wherever it is. For a new beginning, one of the things you've got to do is let go of the past, because you can't keep dragging old stuff with you, right? And so I do like to reflect on where I've come from and what's gone on in the past. What is impacting me now? What is raising its head for the future? Endings and new beginnings are always huge and dramatic. Yes, they are. Sometimes they are subtle shifts where each day just gets lighter, like winter into spring, in fact. But sometimes new beginnings are momentous and huge, and they just all happen all in a rush. And one of the things that I will say is, if you're looking for a new beginning right about now, start creating new goals. New chapters deserve new goals or aspirations. Take some time to reflect on what you want from life, not what your mum said you should have, or what your partner said you should have, or what your children think you should do. What do you want from life? Whether it's your personal health and happiness, whether it's your career goals, whether it's your finances. If you take that kind of stock of letting go of the past and then creating new goals, it's amazing at the point that you can arrive at. But this is where I think that the new begins, and that is start saying yes to new opportunities. Some people are caught in the past, right? So even when new opportunities present themselves, they don't always recognize them because they're so busy looking at who's heading out of the door that they're not looking at who's coming in the door or what is coming in the door. Try new things. Opportunities don't always have to be about work, you know. Practice saying yes to other new things too. And make sure you have quality time to yourself. Quality time to yourself is so imperative in order for you to be able to have a new start. See yourself as a baby bird in a nest who's just learning to kind of fly, just finding their legs and their wings. That's what you are. You're a baby bird. And I also think I think when it comes to new beginnings, it's also really important to prepare yourself to meet new people, right? We get stuck, don't we, with the same people. And that's no disrespect, because I am so grateful to the people who have been around me for a very long time. I'm very, very grateful for them. And but there's nothing wrong with meeting new people either. And sometimes there are people who are in our environment who don't need to be there, and they're taking up space. That would be somebody much more that we resonate with, somebody we're much more on the same page with, and we can create new goals and start new things, right? And I'll tell you one other way that I know, that I personally attest to create new beginnings, and that is, there's nothing like a proper spring clean to shift the energy, like a proper spring clean. I mean, my cupboards. So if you come into my home is really tidy, right? I keep my home tidy and my home is clean. But don't look in my drawers. And I mean my cupboard drawers, right? Don't look in them, because I do shove things in drawers. And so my goal, at least part of this weekend, is to start clearing out some of those drawers, because there's stuff in there that I simply don't need. There's equipment that no longer works, right? Why am I holding on to it? What's going on there? Thank you, Good Ship Lollipop. What's that? I find people are in camps and don't want to mix with those who have different views. Creates echo chambers. We don't want echo chambers, kids. It is revealing that I hide things in drawers. No, I mean, some of my drawers, my bedside drawer, there's only 5 things in there. Absolutely scrupulous. And my kitchen drawers are all very organized as well. But if you come into the front room, there's all manner of stuff in there. Anyway, spring clean. And the other thing that I would recommend you do, if you're stuck in any way at all, thank you, Marco, appreciate that. The other thing that I would recommend you do, and that is write a letter to your younger self. It may sound a bit cliche, right? And also write another one to your older self. What do you want your young you to know? And what do you want your older you to know? Right? And, think about it. That expression, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? I mean, what I tell my 18-year-old self was that you're on the right path. Don't let the buggers try and throw you off, right? Because even at 18 years old, I was on the right path because I hate injustices. And so I fight against injustices, and that informs my work. But there'll always be buggers who try and throw you off. Yes. Thank you, John. Very much appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. So happy spring. If it impacts you, of course, we'll have our wonderful viewers in Australia who are just about heading into winter, right? But thank you all for being here. Stephen needs to declutter his place. Good Ship Lollipop said, you can see me melons, but you cannot touch my plums or look in my drawers. Christine's cupboards are a mess too. Thank you, Jacqueline. Very much appreciate all of you. Thank you. What would I say to my older me, Drumstick? Keep on. You're on the right path again. Just keep on. Just keep on. Just keep doing this until I can't do it anymore. Simple as that, right? There's nothing else in the world that I want to do. Like, I've done a lot of different things, but this is the thing that I always come back to. And thank you, Pia. And I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Right. So thank you all. Thank you, of course, to Shin, our mod, sending lots of love to Crazy Bunny. God love her. She's been through it over the last few days. Nin has taken 2 days off work per week to get my house in order. I love that. Short Order Cook is experiencing autumn and the leaves are falling. Where are you? You're in Australia, Short Order. See you all on Monday, says Curly Crew. Yes, indeed. And well, as ever, thank you very much. Thank you all for everything, your donations, your contributions, your emails, being here in the live chat, watching us on playback, whatever. Thank you very, 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 very much. And I want to finish with a quote because that's what I do a lot of the time. And that is, celebrate endings, for they precede new beginnings. Yes, indeed, they do. Have a beautiful, beautiful weekend, you lovely people. I will see you on Monday when I may or may not be as confrontational as I've been today. Who knows? Who knows, eh? Lots of love to you all. See you Monday, everybody. Take good care of yourself. Lots of love.